They called him the Broken Prince of Seoul. 5 nannies in 3 months. 2 child psychologists who left the mansion in tears. 1 speech therapist who threatened to sue for emotional distress. No one wanted the job. The pay was $5,000 a week, cash, tax-free. And still, the agency couldn't find a single soul brave enough or desperate enough to walk into the fortress of Kim Tae-Hyung. My name is Zuri Okeke. I'm not a nanny. I'm a sensory integration specialist. I work with children the world has decided are too difficult. I work with the screamers, the fighters, the ones who hide in closets because the world is too loud. I didn't take the job for the money. I took it because when the agency manager showed me the file, I didn't see a monster. I saw a 7-year-old boy named Min-soo, whose eyes were wide with terror I recognized. I didn't know his father was the head of the Seven Star Syndicate. I didn't know that walking into that house would be like walking into a lion's den. And I certainly didn't know that by saving the son, I was going to accidentally capture the heart of the most dangerous man in Korea. The gate to the estate didn't look like a home entrance. It looked like a military checkpoint. 2 men in black suits checked my ID, my bag, and patted me down. One of them found my kalimba, a small wooden African thumb piano, in my tote bag. "Weapon?" he asked, his hand drifting to his holster. "Instrument," I said calmly, "for the boy. He won't care. He screams at everything." They drove me up the winding driveway. The house was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Concrete, glass, and sharp angles. It was beautiful, but it felt cold, like a mausoleum. I was led by a trembling housekeeper to the 2nd floor. I could hear him before I saw him. It wasn't a tantrum. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated agony, a high-pitched, rhythmic keening sound. The door to the nursery was open. The room was chaotic, expensive toys smashed against the wall, books ripped apart. In the center of the room, curled into a tight ball under a heavy oak table, was Min-soo. He was rocking back and forth so violently, his head was banging against the table leg. Thud, thud, thud. 3 staff members were standing around him, shouting, "Min-soo, stop it! Grab his arms, he's hurting himself. Call the master." They were making it worse. Their panic was feeding his panic. I dropped my bag. I didn't announce myself. I didn't ask for permission. "Get out," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but I used the tone I reserved for emergencies. The staff turned to look at me. "Who are you?" I said, "Get out. All of you. You're overstimulating him. Leave the room now." Maybe it was the confidence, or maybe they were just relieved to have someone else take the blame, but they fled. Silence settled over the room. Real silence. I didn't approach Min-soo. I didn't try to touch him or drag him out. I knew that for a child in sensory overload, touch felt like burning fire. Instead, I sat down on the floor 10 feet away from the table. I sat cross-legged, closed my eyes, and breathed. Thud, Thud, thud. He was still banging his head. I reached into my bag and pulled out the kalimba. I didn't play a song. I just plucked a single metal tine. Bing! The vibration hung in the air. Minsu stopped rocking for a microsecond. I plucked another, a lower note. Pong. I began to play a rhythm. Not a melody, just a heartbeat. Dun, 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 dun. Soft, repetitive, predictable. Autism often craves patterns. Chaos is terrifying. Patterns are safe. Minutes passed. The headbanging stopped. I kept playing, eyes closed, humming a low, wordless lullaby my grandmother used to sing in Nigeria. A song about the river that flows but never hurts the stone. I heard a shuffle. I opened one eye. Minsu had crawled out from under the table. He was small for 7, wearing expensive silk pajamas that looked uncomfortable. His tear-stained face was tilted toward the instrument. I didn't look at him directly. Direct eye contact can feel aggressive. I looked at the kalimba. "It's wood," I whispered to the room, not to him. "It vibrates." I held it out, placing it on the floor between us. Then I pulled my hands back. He crept forward. He reached out a trembling finger and touched the metal key. Ping. His eyes went wide. For the first time, he wasn't screaming. He was listening. And that's when the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I hadn't heard the door open, but suddenly Minsu froze. He scrambled back under the table, hiding again. I turned around. Leaning against the doorframe was a man who looked like he had been carved out of obsidian and ice. He was wearing a black 3-piece suit that cost more than my student loans. His hair was perfectly styled, but his eyes were dead. Kim Tae-Hyung, the shadow of Seoul. He was looking at his son hiding under the table with an expression of profound, exhausted heartbreak, masked by anger. Then he looked at me. "You are the new one," he said, his voice deep, a baritone that vibrated in my chest. "I'm Zuri," I said on the floor. I didn't stand up to bow. "In this room, I am the authority, and you just scared him back into his shell." "Excuse me?" He was curious. He came out. He touched the instrument. And then you walked in radiating stress and anger, and he felt it. He's an empath, Mr. Kim. He feels what you feel. Tae-Hyung took a step into the room. The air felt heavy, suffocating. "I pay people to fix him, not to psychoanalyze me." "He's not a broken toaster, Mr. Kim. You can't fix him. You can only learn his language." I thought he was going to fire me. I thought he might actually kill me. I'd heard the rumors that this man had buried rivals in the foundation of his casinos. Instead, he walked over to the table. He crouched down. He didn't look under it. He just placed a hand on the wood. He hasn't stopped screaming for 3 days. Why is he quiet now? Because for the first time in 3 days, nobody is forcing him to be normal, I answered softly. Tae-Hyung stood up. He looked at me, really looked at me. It felt like being scanned by a predator deciding if I was food or a threat. "You have 1 week, he said coldly. "If he speaks, if he makes any progress, I will double your salary. If he doesn't, you leave, and you never speak of this family again." He turned to leave. "Mr. Kim?" I called out. He stopped. "I need full autonomy. No staff in the room, no locking the doors, and I need you to stop wearing that cologne." He turned his head slightly. "My cologne? It's sandalwood and musk. It's too strong. It hurts his nose. If you want to be near him, you need to smell like nothing." For a second, I saw a flicker of shock on his face. No one gave orders to Kim Tae-Hyung. "1 week," he repeated, and then he was gone. The next 6 days were a war of attrition, but not against Min-soo, against the house. I stripped his room. I took down the chaotic abstract art and put up soothing blue fabrics. I replaced the buzzing fluorescent lights with warm lamps. I didn't force Min-soo to talk. We communicated through rhythm. I would tap on the floor, he would tap back. I would hum, he would hum. I realized he wasn't nonverbal. He was selectively mute. He had words, but they were locked behind a wall of anxiety. And every day, Tae-Hyung watched. I would see him standing in the doorway in the evenings, having showered and, true to my order, wearing no cologne. He would just watch us. One afternoon, we were in the garden. I was showing Min-soo how to touch the texture of tree bark. Tae-Hyung walked out onto the terrace. He was on a call, his voice low and dangerous. "Break his legs if he doesn't pay. I don't care." He hung up and saw me listening. He walked over. "You disapprove." "It's not my business what you do, Mr. Kim, as long as you leave that darkness at the door." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Darkness is what pays for this sanctuary, Zuri. Darkness is what keeps him safe." "He doesn't feel safe," I said. "He feels isolated." "He is a target," Tae-Hyung snapped, his composure cracking. "Do you know how many people want to hurt him to get to me? If I let him out, if I let him be normal, he dies. This fortress is the only way." "Then build a fortress he can live in, not a prison." He looked at me with that intensity again. The distance between us closed. I could feel the heat radiating off him. "You have a sharp tongue, Zuri Okeke. Most people lose their tongues when they speak to me." "I'm not most people." "No," he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fleeting second. "You certainly aren't." Day 7, the deadline. I was sitting on the rug with Min-soo. We were reading a book about whales. Tae-Hyung entered the room. It was Judgment Day. "Time is up," he said. "Has he spoken?" I looked at Min-soo. "Min-soo, look who's here." Min-soo looked up. He didn't hide, he didn't rock. He reached for the kalimba that I had left on the floor. He picked it up and walked over to his father. Tae-Hyung froze. He stood like a statue, afraid to move. Min-soo held up the instrument, and then, in a voice rusty from disuse but clear as a bell, he whispered one word: "Play." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Tae-Hyung fell to his knees. It was the most ungraceful thing I had ever seen him do. He fell to his knees so he could be eye level with his son. "Play?" Tae-Hyung choked out. Min-soo nodded. "Play, Dad." Tae-Hyung's hands that I knew had held guns and signed death warrants, shook as he took the tiny instrument. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. The obsidian had melted. "Thank you," he mouthed. I nodded and turned to leave the room to give them their moment. "Stay," he commanded. But it wasn't a command. It was a plea. Please, stay. Things changed after that. The house got warmer. Tae-Hyung came home earlier. We ate dinner together, the three of us. It felt dangerous. It felt like playing house with a wolf. But the world outside hadn't forgotten who Kim Tae-Hyung was. 2 weeks later, we were returning from a private clinic checkup. Tae-Hyung insisted on driving us himself, with a security convoy. We were stopped at a red light when the window shattered. It happened in slow motion. A motorcycle pulled up. A crowbar smashed the passenger window where I was sitting. A hand reached in, not for me, but for Min-soo in the back seat. "Min-soo!" I screamed. I didn't think. I threw my body over the center console into the back seat, shielding the boy with my own body. Glass rained down on my back. I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder as the attacker tried to drag me out of the way. Then a gunshot, deafening inside the car. Tae-Hyung had drawn his weapon and fired through the broken window. The attacker fell. The convoy swarmed us. Tae-Hyung turned around, his face with a mask of pure terror. "Zuri! Zuri!" "I'm okay," I gasped, although my shoulder was bleeding. "Min-soo's okay. I have him." Tae-Hyung dragged us out of the car. He didn't check the attacker. He didn't check his guards. He pulled me into his arms, crushing me against his chest. He was shaking. The dragon of Seoul was shaking. I thought he buried his face in my neck, inhaling sharply. "I thought I lost you both." That night, after the police, after the doctor stitched up my shoulder, I sat in the library. I was packing my bag. It was too dangerous. I couldn't stay. Tae-Hyung walked in. He was wearing a fresh suit, but he looked ragged. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," I said. "Min-soo needs safety." "I am a civilian, Tae-Hyung. I can't live in a war zone." He crossed the room in 3 strides. He took the bag from my hand and threw it on the floor. "You're not leaving. You can't keep me here. Watch me," he growled. He pinned me against the bookshelf, not to hurt me, but to trap me. His hands were on either side of my head. "Min-soo needs you. He spoke today. He asked where Zuri was." "He needs a father, not a therapist. He needs a mother," Tae-Hyung yelled. The words hung in the air. He stared at me, his chest heaving. "And I need you." He touched my bandaged shoulder. His touch was feather-light. Today, when that glass broke, I didn't fear for my empire. I didn't fear for my life. I feared that the only light in my dark world was about to be extinguished. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. "You tamed my son, Zuri. Do you think you can walk away without taming the beast too?" "Is that a threat?" I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It's a negotiation," he murmured, his lips brushing against mine. "Stay. Be his mother. Be my partner. I will burn the world down before I let anyone touch a hair on your head again." I looked into his eyes. I saw the danger. I saw the violence. But I also saw the man who fell to his knees because his son whispered a word. "I'm expensive, Mr. Kim. I own the city, Zuri. I can afford you." I didn't leave. The contract changed. I wasn't the nanny anymore. I became the only woman who could walk through the fire of the Seven Star Syndicate without getting burned. Because the dragon wasn't guarding the gold. He was guarding me.